level. So a lot of the architectural rooftop detail in the bowling level was, again, like an early attempt at a kit assembly for buildings in there that somehow made it through to the end of the game. I really thought that those were going to get revamped at some point, but they ended up working, so that was great. I worked on Maligula near the end of the game. So that was a cool one because I was actually there with Jeremy French and with Levi, and we had Seth, designer Seth, in there as well, and we would sit in a room and figure out what do we want this level to look like. You know, we would look at Peter's high-level art and then read what Tim's description was, what he wanted for the space, and just brainstorm. What did we want this to look like? What do we want this to look like? So that went through iterations as well. So the trees were really hard. There were a bunch of us artists. I think Tristan made the final version of them. There's a fine balance between stylized and cartoony. It's hard to find, and then you might find a balance, but it's the wrong balance for this game. So the things we look at for Psychonaut was what we called wonk, where nothing is plumb and nothing is level. So everything not only skews this way, but then also skews that way. Kind of, a thing. Jeff tried a way, I tried a way, and I think Tristan's way looks amazing, and we came up with a final good solution. But that is a good example of the iteration that things go through. So I may have worked on the questionable area, but the trees are not the trees that I worked on. Everybody touches them. We all help get them to the point where they're what we want. It's definitely a team effort. So one of the very first things I made for Psychonauts 2 was right when I was hired. I was asked to work on the questionable area, the redwood forest. I love redwoods. It's my favorite tree. So I did all kinds of research on fungus. We can use all of these lichens, and everyone was like, this girl's a little strange, but creative. So we'll go with it. I ended up just making a bunch of funny little fungi, or suggesting it for what we call the foliage pass. And one of them ended up staying in the game. It didn't get cut. And those are the purple turkey tail mushrooms that stick out of the sides of the redwoods that you see once in a while in the questionable area. And I love that little silly thing that I made right in the beginning, just to get used to the style and stuff, made it all the way through the end.
Hi, my name is Becca Vessel. I'm a gameplay programmer with an AI specialist. I have 8 years of gameplay programming experience, and I've worked on NPC, animal AI, and boss systems in Psychonauts 2. They have different systems, but some of the core systems are the same, like using nav mesh to kind of like path around, for example. Lucky, she's more doing kind of more of a sequence of attacks. That's just what Asif wanted, and it didn't need to be anything that's like really reactive to the player. She's the first boss that you face, so we didn't want it to be like super overwhelming, but the Cassie boss and Maligula boss are, though. It's extremely clear, especially in the Maligula boss, because she doesn't even have like a cooldown between attacks. For example, if she's really far away from you, she'll either do the water snake projectile attack, or she'll do a charge attack, and then after the charge attack she'll do like a melee attack. And similarly, like the Cassie boss, even though she does have a global cooldown between her sequence of attacks, she does have this way of evaluating conditions and being like, oh yeah, the player is far away from me, I'm gonna do like maybe like the bee swarm attack. Or like maybe the player is like really close to me, so like they'll do like the shush attack or like the swipe attack. Lucky's card pass attack is actually one of the more intricate attacks. Even for a while, it didn't really feel like it was really that dangerous. Actually, there's like a lot of different, just intricate details involved with that particular attack. All the card decks themselves that she spawns as well, it's the beginning point and end points of these splines that are dynamically being like moving with the animation. The card decks themselves, when the attack actually executes, there's like this multi-box like sweep that matches with the card deck VFXs as it plays through that spline. It didn't really feel dangerous at first because I think Tim was really concerned that this wasn't feeling good.
Whoa, look at those things coming through. It's like a subway in New York City. I love it. They're not that threatening though. I'm never going to be standing over there. They got to come after me.
I feel like a part of Lucky's boss fight would be missing without that attack. And so I was like, maybe we could look at whatever the first set of card passes there is in like the first phase and see if one of those paths is close to wherever Raz is. If we do that, at least we know that this card pass attack will definitely hit Raz. And that actually saved the card pass attack from being axed.
Looks like it's time for a fresh deck.
It definitely even feels even more dangerous in the third phase of the attack because she plays like the table shock first and then the card pass happens after that.
It's time to double down.
What?
Foreshadowing.
Awesome.
Because of that, you have to like jump on a chip stack not close to the card pass, which can be difficult. Or use a love ball, yeah. For me, I really like working on the different variety of problems to solve. In all these boss fights, there was different variety of attacks that needed to be, made. It was cool to be able to kind of solve all these different kinds of problems and like iterate on them and make them feel good and like either dangerous to the player and just like work with the whole team to kind of make this boss fight feel the best it could be.
Awesome. Can't wait to play it again with all that new stuff. She looks beautiful.
It does.
You're a pretty lady. Okay, goodbye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
And I've never worked on boss fights before, so I felt like it was like a really big step up. I don't know. It's just like really cool to been given this opportunity to work on these epic boss fights.
I'm Naoko Takamoto, and I'm a principal producer at Double Fine. I was the lead producer at the end, at the very end, like what, 9 months of Psychonauts 2. I got the fun part. Video games are fucking cool. Like, they're cool. I don't know. I'm so happy that I got to work on Psychonauts 2. I'm real proud of that, and I'm glad that I make things that like people have fun with. I know a lot of people think that a producer's job is to like say no and make sure everybody's on track and all this stuff, but it's really, if I could, I would say yes to everything because people want to make a cool game. People want to make cool stuff, so why would I want to get in the way of that, really? But then there's like the other side where like I am looking at schedules, I am doing the math and seeing how much there is to make and how much time we have, and I will make a schedule, but it's really just putting together, like I'm usually given deadlines. Like I'll be given the ultimate deadline, right? I'll try and like chop that up and make it more manageable so that like it doesn't mean anything to be like, well, the game has to be done in 2 years. That doesn't help anyone. Try and, cut it up into manageable pieces so that people understand how everyone fits in with each other and why priorities are the way they are. It is kind of figuring out what each team needs, like as a discipline, what's the work that they want to get accomplished, and as people, how can we help them work comfortably? So you kind of want to get to know your team, because one way of doing things isn't going to work for everybody, and different things step on different people's toes. There are different ways to communicate that to people. Like some people do really well by seeing it on paper, some people just remember everything that's said to them, or some people do well if they see graphs. I kind of just want to figure it out and try and make like the information they need to understand accessible. The work that I do is a lot of it's just logical, right? So I just have to find information. Just the creative part is like, what do I do with this information to make it helpful to people? I don't know, like I come from customer service, which is why I think I do things the way that I do. Like I sold shoes, I sold clothes, I sold wigs, I washed hair, I bartended, it's like a lot of these things. And I think that helped me be a producer, or at least influences how I am as a producer, because I am selling people something, I'm selling them like the next 2 weeks or the rest of the sprint. somebody was unavailable to do the translation, so the really janky Latin, the Cassie books, that was for me. We just decided we wanted to do them in Latin, and I'm just like, sure, I remember something I learned 20 years ago and haven't used since. Tim wrote a poem that I had to translate. So it was like 6 B's, but 6 in Latin is sex, and B is APES. And I was just like, Tim, I don't think this is Sex Apes. I don't think the book can be called Sex Apes. And then he just ignored me. And then they put it in that way, and I'm just like, you guys, you can't actually. You got it. I'm like, Tim, you got to give me a different title, man. Like,
Eat him, sex ape for it. What kind of perverse level is this?
so he rewrote it, but it was like a story of bees helping out. That is my one contribution to the game.
Oh my god, the credits. We had to credit Naoko for the Latin translation.
Will do no such thing.
Just to make sure everyone knows whose fault it is when they send their complaint letters.
Latin expert.
Naoko Takamoto and her email address right there in the credits.
Naoko at mybigboymail.com.
I don't know if they've got a prototype and it works well enough. They said fucking file the patent. I don't know if they just fucking did this and they filed the patent before they make I don't fucking know, but you got to see this fucking thing. Sony comes out today, well, they filed the patent, and there's no guarantee either of these will be made, but this one's batshit crazy. And what you've got are these gel grips, and the gel grip is able to change temperature. If you're playing in a level and it's like really cold, or you're supposed to be scared, it'll get cold. Or if it's a really intense section, or if you're in a firefight, it'll heat up. I'm sure this is not a fire hazard. But beyond that, this material, it's elastic and it stretches and you can press it. It's like really hard putty or something. The controller is able to read those presses, and I guess the depth and the intensity of those presses and those rubbings and, you know, all whatever it is you can, the stretching and all this and twisting, right? All of that. And they're saying, let's make a controller out of it. I think that's pretty fucking cool. Now, yes, Sony is probably, every time they put out a piece of hardware, you're dealing with like 60% gimmick, 40% wow, that's fucking amazing. But you got to swing for the fences, and this is a hell of a swing for the fences. I don't know if this will ever get made. I don't know if there's a prototype floating around the halls of Sony. This is pretty fucking cool, though. I like the temperature idea. I like the idea of just different ways to engage with the game itself, with that, you know, twisting and stretch. It's like Bop It, right? It's like twisting and pulling and stretching and rubbing and pushing in. I have to sit and really think about it at a design level of like, well, okay, what can we do with that? And hopefully it'll be more than just the gimmick, like the back touch of Vita. And it was like, oh, you know, stupid. But you gotta take some chances. But this is pretty cool. I'm interested, if for no other reason than I just want to see how it feels. And I think you gotta risk some weird shit to make the next great thing. So who knows? We may never see anything else about this, but right now it exists in the world. And yes, of course, my mind immediately goes to porn with this thing, and that's obviously not what Sony's going to let you do, but I'm sure somebody will. Keep an eye out. The one thing I'll say about this is, you know, the tricky part of this is, like, I know I've told this story before, but I remember reading PSM magazine when they were talking about the analog buttons. If you remember, and I guess it's still in, I don't know, but remember these buttons? The face buttons on the controller actually got analog functionality, so the harder you press them on the PS2, the game registered it. And I know in Twisted Metal we were like, "Ooh, we'll use that for gas," and you know, and it's just, you're playing the game. You don't, the fidelity. It's even the big spongy ones. I don't know a lot of people that really do anything more than on off, right? Well, you're certainly not going to do it with this. But I remember reading in PSM, they're like, oh, you know, if you're Lara Croft and you're moving against the wall, and if you touch the wall too hard and it's like weak, it'll collapse. And I'm like, no. I mean, I remember reading it going, okay, maybe they've seen something I haven't, but I worked at Sony at the time, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So, you know, there's a good chance it won't work, but it's pretty cool. I'm interested. Well, hey there, fellas. It's me, Jaffe. Thank you for watching that video. Be sure to look up there and hit
I used to be a Final Fantasy fanboy long time ago. Let's see what they got.